Hey everybody, so we are going to start our first stitch in this lesson, which is going to be the single crochet. This is the most simple stitch that we're going to learn, and we're going to go over the rest of these stitches as well. So what the names are is this is a single crochet, this is a half double crochet, this is a double crochet, and this is a triple crochet. So those are all the most basic stitches, so we're going to learn those. You can see that they get a little bit bigger with each size difference there. So single, half double, double, triple. So we are going to learn this one today. So we're going to start off with that one. So first thing, this is the color that we're going to use today. This is the yarn that I got at Hobby Lobby. That was the I Love This Yarn. I cannot remember the color name of it, but I can add that to the description so that you can find that if you want it. So there's two different ways that you can take yarn off of a skein. You can take off of the outside, so it unwraps like this. I find this to be frustrating because you're always lifting it and unwinding it, and then it just seems to get frustrating to me, but that is a possibility. A lot of people do it that way as well. What I like to do is I like to do the center pull. So you might have to dig for it in the inside of the skein and pull it out, and sometimes a lot of the center comes out, but it's okay. You can use it up. It's all good. But a lot of the time they will be sticking out when you purchase it as well. So there's that. So I use the center pull. So I'm going to do that. And we're going to be using our 5.5 millimeter eye hook. So we're going to be using that one today. So I'm going to go over the first step of this is a chain. And the way we start a chain is with a slip knot. So let's see here. With a slip knot, what we're going to do is lay the yarn across our first two fingers there. See, we have the tail right there at the end, and then this is connected to the skein. So that's how we're going to hold our yarn like that. And I pinch it down with my thumb so it doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to wrap the yarn around my fingers, and you're going to cross over so that you've got a little X there on the top of your fingers. Do it again. Lay the yarn across your fingers like this. Pinch it down with your thumb. Take the yarn around your fingers and cross it over the top like that. And then I like to hold that yarn down with my other two fingers. All right, so you see how that's crossed over like that? All right, so now we're going to take our hook. We're going to go under that first strand right there, and we're going to grab that second one. Now when we pull it through, just let the yarn slide through your two fingers holding down on it over here. It'll slide through there like that. And then what you want to do is pull your first two fingers out of that loop while you're holding on to it with your hook, and hold on to the other ones there. So see, like that. I'm still holding on with my ring and pinky, and pull that knot tight. And then it's a slip knot, so it slides like that. All right, we'll do it again. There's a bunch of different ways to make slip knots, but this is how I find is the easiest. So you're going to hold that down, wrap it around, and we're going to go under that first loop and grab the second one. And remove your fingers there and just pull that tight. There you go. And then you can slide it up to your hook like that. So that is your slip knot. Now I'm going to show you how to chain. So this is the base of your stitches. This is what your first row of stitches goes into. So you're going to, you can wrap the yarn around your fingers however it's comfortable. What I used to do is I used to just hold my yarn like this and just let it slide through my finger like that. I found that I was cramping in this in my ring and my pinky because of trying to hang on to it for tension. So what I like to do now is I just wrap my finger around like that, and then I have it through my fingers like that. So around my pinky gives a little bit more tension so that I can loosen up on my fingers holding onto the yarn really tight. So whatever is comfortable. I know a lot of people will wrap it around several times around their pointer finger. Some people will loop it through their fingers a different way. It's totally up to you and what feels comfortable. So that's how I hold mine. And now what we're going to do for our chain, and you can go over this a bunch of times. You don't need to use the first chain that you do because you'll be working on your tension and you'll get the right size of chain as you practice, because it's going to be loose and uncomfortable the first time. And, it's good to just keep practicing over and over till it looks the way that you want it to look. So the first thing that you're going to do is I hold the tail right there with my middle finger and my thumb. And then I always keep a finger on this hook, or I'm sorry, on this loop here on my hook, because it gives me a little bit more stability and a little bit more control on the hook and the loop. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay your hook across your yarn like this and behind it just a little bit. And now you see how it's crossed over and underneath the hook. See underneath the hook part of your hook. All right, so then what you're going to do is you're going to pull this yarn through the loop on your hook. And if you look at this loop, if you look at that loop on your hook, you see how there is a point at the bottom? It's almost like an upside down teardrop. So what your goal is the hook end of your hook is going to pass through that loop in that section so that it won't catch on your yarn. If you don't do it that way, it's going to be really difficult getting your hook through this loop because it's going to catch the other parts of it. So again, we're going to lay our hook on the yarn, wrap it around, grab that yarn with your hook, and we're going to pull that hooked part of the hook through that teardrop section right there. So, see that? Like that. And we've made our first chain. So then we're going to do that again. Lay it on the yarn, wrap it around, pull it through that point of the teardrop section there. And there's our second chain. I'm going to do that again. Lay it across the yarn, wrap it around, bring it through. And like I said, to get the chains uniform, it's going to take practice. So don't expect it to look perfect the first time that you do it. You can just tear it out and redo it and tear it out and redo it. You can even keep the first few chains that you do. You can cut the yarn and keep them so that you can compare and see how much you've improved. That's really fun to see too. All right, so wrap it around, bring it through that existing loop on there. Wrap it around, bring it through. So you've got a chain there. So let's go over what parts you consider a chain, because each of these count as a chain. So I want to show you the how to find it. So this part is, see that V there? That's one chain. This other V, second chain, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And you see that tiny little knot there on the bottom? That's our slip knot. And that was the first loop. This one right here, this V was the first loop that we had on our hook. So then we got the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then we have our sixth one on our hook. Right now, sorry, I can't see it. All right. And then just keep going. And then if you want to tear this out and try again, all you do is remove your hook from that and you just pull this yarn and it pops right out. That's always really fun. All right, so to start our single crochet, I'm going to chain 25. So we're going to go 25 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Okay, so I have 25. So that means right there, that would be, I want my section to be 25 single crochets across. So to start our stitches, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 to bring up the height of the stitch. So we're going to chain 1 more to bring up the height of the stitch, and then we're going to be working 25 across. Because if we just started working now, we have to skip this first chain to bring up the height so that we're working even all the way across, or it would end up that your piece would end up going up at a slight angle. It would kind of be curved. So we want to bring up our height first and then move across. So if I want my section to be 25 stitches, then I need to chain 1 more to get that 25 stitches across. I hope that makes sense. So chain 1 more. We are going to work into these stitches. You see how there's V's here? There's a V there, a V there, a V there. We looked at that just a second ago. So we are going to work into those V's. So we had 25 chains here, and then we added that 26th one. That is our turning chain. So we are going to skip over that last stitch that we made. That was the 26th stitch. We're going to put our hook into that second chain from our hook. So we're going to just put that hook into that V there, and you can use your finger to push the yarn onto your hook like that. Sometimes that's the easiest way. So now you have your loop on your hook, and then you also have your hook through that chain. So now you're going to wrap your yarn around, same idea as when you made the chains. Now you're going to pull that yarn through that chain. All right. So now you have those two loops on your hook. That was from the loop that was already on your hook, and then that is the loop you just pulled up from that chain you just went into. Now you're going to wrap your yarn around again, and you're going to pull it through those two loops on your hook. And that is your first single crochet. And we're going to go into our next chain. So you see, this is the one we just worked into, this one right here. So we are going to work into the next chain. And it'll take a little bit of time for you to get used to the look of what the chains are, the definition of each one. And that's fine. Just take your time, be patient with yourself. So we're going to go into that next chain here. We're going to wrap our yarn around the hook again, and we're going to pull it through that chain there. So now we have two loops on our hook again. Going to wrap our yarn around our hook and pull through both loops on the hook. And that is our second chain. You can see that right there. That's one and that's two. You can see the top of them. They're forming those V's again. So there's one and there's two. All right, so then we're going to do one more stitch here. And to go into that next chain, I'm going to wrap around and bring back through. You've got two loops on your hook. You're going to wrap your yarn around again and pull it through both loops on your hook. And that is our third single crochet. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about stitch markers. Stitch marker looks like is a bunch of different kinds. There's this kind, there's that kind, that's spiral. You just place that end through your stitch and just pull it through, and that little section there allows it to not pull all the way through. So pretty cool. We also have these. Get in the camera. Goodness. Okay. So we have these. This is a little skein of yarn. This little charm. So cute. Again, I got these from Temu. They're really inexpensive on Temu. It takes a little bit to receive them, like the hooks, but they have a lot of fun ones on there. All right, we've got these plastic ones. This is the most common, I think. It's just like a little plastic clothespin looking thing. This one just closes like that. Pretty fun. I think that's the most common. I found these. I think I got these on Amazon. The beads are just so pretty. They've got that little clasp, good jewelry clasp. They're so cute. It came in a huge pack. Let's see, do I have any other fun ones? I think that's about it of those, the fun ones, but I did have other things. If you don't want stitch markers, you can use a bunch of things like this. So you have a paper clip. You can pull it around your stitch. Just wrap it around like that. Those are really nice. You can use a bobby pin. Just a regular old bobby pin. You can get these at the dollar store. Put that through your hook and it holds on to the yarn really well. It doesn't slide out. Got a safety pin. And then I have an earring. I lost one of the earrings too. So I just use this. I like the one that has like the little clip on the back. That works really well too. That's so cute. Yeah, you can use any variety of those things. So What you want to do with a stitch marker is you want it on the first stitch that you made so that you can keep track when you're coming back around. Because how we work rows is you go right to left, and then you turn it, and then you go right to left, and you keep turning right to left, turn right to left. So we want to know where our end stitch is. So if you see these again, this is our first or our last stitch that we made here. This is the second stitch that we made, and this is the first stitch. So what we want to do is we want to put that stitch marker underneath that first stitch so that we know that is our last stitch, because it's very easy to go back and forth and miss that last stitch, and then your work ends up going like into a pyramid. So we want to make sure we don't do that. Also, counting is a really good way to make sure you're not missing stitches. Sorry if you couldn't see that again, all over the place. All right, so just put that right through that stitch there. See it that way? And that's just to keep track of it. It's not holding anything together or anything like that. It's just to be a visual reminder of where you started at. Okay, now that we have our stitch marker, we're going to work the rest of the way across our chain. So we're going to go into that chain, wrap around and pull up a loop. Got 2 loops on our hook, and to wrap around and bring through those 2 loops. I'm going to go into this next chain, one right there. Pull up a loop, wrap around, pull through 2. Go into that chain, wrap around, pull up a loop, wrap around, and go through 2. I'm going to show you one more time. You go into that next chain, wrap around, pull through 2. I'm sorry, pull through that chain, wrap around, and pull through 2. All right, I'm going to work all the way to the last chain, and I will meet you there. Okay, we are at our last chain. So we're going to work into that last chain the same that we did all the other chains. Just going to go in to the chain space. We're going to wrap around and pull up a loop. Got 2 loops on your hook. Now wrap around and pull through 2. Now we're going to do a chain 1 for our turning chain. And we're going to turn our work. So that means just flipping it around like this. And now we're going to work on the opposite side of your work, and we're going to go the opposite direction, still working from right to left. And so you can see this is the chain that we turned with. That is the chain. This is the next stitch we're going into. So you've got the chain and the first stitch. So we're going to be working into that first stitch. So we're going to go under both of those bars there that form that V look. We're going to go under both of those. So we're going to wrap around our yarn and bring it through. And you've got 2 loops on your hook. Going to wrap it around and bring through those 2. Okay, and before we go any farther, I'm going to do our next stitch marker on that spot right there. So you're just going to put, you see that little V there? We're going to put our stitch marker under those 2 bars right there. just like that. Clasp that, and then we'll know what our first stitch was on our way back. All right, so we're going to go into our next single crochet from the previous row. We already went into this one. We're going to go into the next one. Right under both of those sections of that V, I'm going to wrap our yarn around and bring it through. You have 2 loops on your hook, wrap around and bring through 2. That is your second single crochet. And it'll take a little bit of getting used to know what bumps here that you're supposed to work into. But I always look at the top just in case you can't tell from this side. If you can see the definition of those V's, you can pretty much see where you're supposed to go because your hook is just supposed to go under that V right there. So you see you already worked into this one. So we're going to work into the next one there. And your hook goes under that. And from this side, it looks like this. I'm going to go into this part right there. See how you see these little bumps here? Like little ridges or scallops. You're going to go under that. That's what it looks like from the side. That's what it looks like from the top. Going to wrap around your yarn, bring through. Got 2 loops on your hook, wrap around, bring through those 2. If you are struggling getting your hook through your stitches, just remember to use that hook part of the hook and make sure that goes sideways through these stitches because that's where the void is. Because if you're going into your stitch like this and wrapping your yarn around and you're going up with your hook like this, it's going to get caught. So you want to make sure you tilt your hook so it slides through that void on the side there, on that edge. Like if you think of these stitches as horizontal stitches and you want to make sure that your hook goes in a horizontal direction to pull the loops through. It makes it a little bit easier. And then this one, you loop it around and remember that void down there on the bottom, that teardrop. Same thing that we did with the chain. It's the same idea. You just go right through those stitches like that. So the direction that the point of your hook is at definitely helps you get your stitches and your loops through a lot easier than struggling with catching a lot of loops of yarn. Go into that next stitch, wrap around our yarn, bring it through, wrap around and bring through 2. And we're going to work all the way across and I will meet you at our last stitch for this row. All right, so we are at our last stitch there. You see how we have that stitch marker in that last stitch there so we don't miss it. We are going to go into that same space as that stitch marker. You can pull your stitch marker out or you can work in there with it in if there's enough space. So just the same as we did with all the other stitches, we put our hook through that stitch, going to wrap around our yarn and bring it through. We've got 2 loops on our hook, wrap around and bring through 2. Right. So we have completed 2 full rows of single crochet. It looks so nice. And if yours does not look like this the first few times that you do it, that's okay because it takes practice to get your tension right. It takes practice to learn all of your loops. And a really good tip too is to make sure you're counting your stitches when you're first starting and throughout your projects, even if you're not starting out and you've been working on stuff for a while, it's still very helpful to count your stitches. I do it all the time because I miss stitches and I double stitch into spaces and I miscount all the time. So it's very helpful to count every couple rows to make sure that you still have the right stitch count. So we're going to chain one and turn our work one more time so you can see that again. We are going to chain one and we're going to turn our work and we're going to work in that first stitch there. So we're going to put our hook in there, wrap around our yarn, 2 loops on our hook, wrap around, go through 2. I'm going to move my stitch marker up to this one since I don't need it here anymore. And I'm just going to go underneath those 2 little bars of that V there. Right. I'm going to go in our next stitch, wrap around, pull up a loop, wrap around, go through 2. One more time, go into that stitch, wrap around, pull up a loop, wrap around, go through 2. All right. That is all you need to know. You can go back and forth as far as you want. You could make a scarf with this. You could make a square for a blanket. You could make whatever you want. I will meet you back here when we are ready to tie this off. I'm going to make a square and then I'm going to tie it off with you and show you how to weave in ends. I'll meet you back here then. Okay, so we are all finished. I did make sure that I had it square, so I measured the width and the length and did my best to make sure that those were pretty square. You can also check to see if it's square by going corner to corner. And if it matches up pretty well, you're about there. All right, so what we're gonna do to tie it off is you have your loop over here. That was your final stitch. We finished off with that final single crochet here. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain one and then you can cut your yarn. I like to leave a few inch tail, like 4 inches, about 4 inches there. And then you're just going to pull that loop all the way through. So you're going to pull the yarn through there. And then what it does is it pulls that slip, or I'm sorry, that chain tightens like that. And you've got a pretty secure finish there. But for the very end, what I'm going to do is weave in the ends so that it really won't come undone. So one of these needles are very helpful. Let me see if I have a pack. They have these at Walmart, I believe, for a couple dollars. It's very helpful to have. I like this one because it is still a short needle, but the eye of the needle is pretty big, so that the yarn goes through there pretty easily. You could also use one like this. It's a little bit longer, and the eye is a little bit larger. So that's also a helpful one to use if you like that. I just like the shorter one. You can also use, let me see, this is one that is typically available too. I think this is a yarn needle. The reason I don't like these as much is because the end here is not as sharp as the metal needle, so that's why I typically go with that, but this works too. All right, so we're going to thread that. What I like to do is I like to fold the yarn over the needle like this and hold it tight with my nail, and that keeps all the edges down here so that they don't fray when you're trying to thread the needle. And then I just wiggle that yarn through like that. That's what works for me, but there's a lot of things you could do. You could use a, let's see, a yarn, or like a needle threader, something like that. Got these on Amazon, like a huge pack of them. And what you do is you put that hook through the eye of the needle like that, and then you loop your yarn into that hook like this, and then you pull it through like that. So that's an option to do that as well. And then what we're going to do is take 3 passes through this piece, and we'll weave it in and it'll be hidden really well. I like to go in between the stitches. Like that. And if you pull it too tight, you can just loosen it like by pulling it back the other direction. And then I'm going to go back the opposite direction here. Just weave that needle through those stitches to hide that tail. And I like to go one more time. Stay there, like that. And then I pull my needle off, straighten it out just a little, and then you can clip that tail. What you don't want to do is tie it off and just clip it, because then your whole piece could fray. So that is the end tied in. And then I'm going to do this bottom tail as well, so you can watch again. I'm going to thread the needle, lay my needle across the yarn, fold it over, pinch it, and wiggle that through. Or like I said, you could use the needle threader. I'm just going to make 3 passes through these stitches. I just wiggle it through, make sure I'm catching those stitches, and then it doesn't show through on the other side either. Just makes it nice and tidy. One more. Oh, sorry. One more. There. And then just clip it off. And you are all done. You have completed a single crochet project. So exciting. All right. I am so excited to join you for our half double crochets that are next, and I'll see you in the next video.